All right, g'day everyone. So, a few weeks ago, I got into one of the Flat Earth Friday spaces, and it was an absolute shit show. They were asking me fucking questions that were just so stupid that, well, you know, I denied what they were saying, even though they kept on trying to make me agree with what they wanted me to think. And I kept saying no, and they wouldn't accept it. Anyway, I went away. I had a bit of a think about some of the things I was saying, and I came up with a few thoughts about why these toroidal field theories being connected to planetary orbits is so freaking stupid, so whack, as I've written it in this thing. Now, I've been posting this on Witsits and Alan's space. Toby's already blocked me. But look, nobody's actually replied apart from some, Glean dude. And he asked like a billion questions which were totally unrelated. So I just had to walk away from that conversation because he was just asking just monotonous, pathetic questions. So I'll read it out. I may see if I can put some images in, but I mean, realistically, when you're on Flat Earth Fridays, it's all verbal anyway. So, you should be able to hear it from verbal perspective. So I'll get started. I wrote this back on May 7, 2024. Now, the short summary at the beginning, I just said geocentric ideas of the planet's movement around the Earth is an archaic idea that was abandoned 500 years ago. So there was a time where people believed in a geocentric planetary orbit, but that since has been sort of challenged. It might be useful to locate planets in the night sky from Earth's perspective, but it is not how the orbits work. People were burned at the stake for suggesting heliocentrism. Now, this is a bit of a crazy story. So there is a guy from Italy who kept suggesting a heliocentric perspective to the point where he was saying that there are more planets, more solar systems that are potentially for harboring life far out inside the galaxy. Such views got him in a lot of hot water with the Christian churches, and they burn him at the stake for such ideas. We don't do any burning at the stakes these days, but I'll tell you what. Now, what have I got here? So, now today I've written clowns like Witsits and Alan are on a trip. Now, I mean like drug trip in their decisions to merge the ideas. Now, keep in mind I just said merge the ideas because that's exactly what they're doing. They are merging a heliocentric map that's drawn by people from 500 years ago, and they're overlaying it with their toroidal fields and saying, hey, look, it's the same. It's not the fucking same. So now today, clowns like Witsits and Alan are on a trip in their decisions to merge ideas of geocentric astronomy with electromagnetic toroidal fields. I said a great leap into the world with pink elephants and Oompa Loompas, because as far as I'm concerned, they're just pulling at strings and they're just on the trip down on drugs thinking about this sort of stuff. Maybe they've been sleeping under too many crystals or something like that, dream catchers and stuff. Here's a few points I would like to be considered when cross-examining these theories, instead of blindly accepting these two ideas as coincidentally matching. This is one of the things that they were doing on this particular thing, is they kept trying to get me to concede and to confess. They love trying to make people concede and confess. To concede this idea that the geocentric orbits and this toroidal electromagnetic field are somehow coincidentally matching. Now, I said no. They didn't like that answer. They just kept hammering onto it. Anyway, so I said, because science is not about saying what looks the same are the same at all. So, now, there was a comment in that same piece where Flat Earth Dave was suggesting that all of the planets orbit Polaris. I've got a video I probably did about 2 videos back, and I go into what I think he's talking about. So what he was suggesting when he insisted that the planets orbit Polaris on a daily basis, like every single day, the planets track overhead in an arc shape each night or day, depending on the position. So sometimes you might not actually be able to see a planet because it's on the day side. Sometimes you can get it to the night, and maybe you might get it through the night for a 6-month period or something like that, and then suddenly you can't see it anymore because you'll never be able to see it because it's always daytime when it's in position. So that's one arc every 24 hours, as I just said. So it goes over our head every single day. So how does the planet pathways form a shape of the flower of life, as they like to sometimes put it, when they arc over each day? So, and only a microscopic position changes in relation to the stars they are near. Seems like an indiscernible regular cycle on a daily basis. So when we look out in the middle of the night, we see a planet up in the sky. Let's say it's Jupiter, which I've been watching for months now. It just goes over, boom, boom, over again, boom, over again. So how do you see these cycles, this geocentric pathway when it just goes over every single day? The people who went out there and made those plans, they had to track those planets, every single day for like a year or 2 years at a time. And one thing I know for sure is none of these flat earthers are actually doing any of that themselves. They are just pulling up maps from people who have since died, and they're pulling that up as their own bloody evidence, even though they actually haven't gone out there and performed it themselves. Not that I've performed it, because I ain't got the time to do that sort of stuff, but they're pulling up maps from previous people and saying, well, look, they all fit. Okay, so how does, say, the position of Saturn form a flower of life pattern if it flies overhead 365 times per year and takes 29 years and of 29 epicycles to return back to the origin point of observation? That's roughly 10,500 days of tracked positions to log. Not only you have to track it up in the sky, but you also have to track it from the fact that it's also rolling over your sky. So you're going to have to so when they go out there and position these things, they go and find out what stars they're nearby, and they say, okay, it's this distance away from this distance away from this star, that's its position for tonight. And so they'll let the day progress on, because obviously it's rolling over your head, and they just find out which stars it's clumped next to, and then the next day they'll find out where it's positioned the next day. So every single day it moves out a little bit further. Many flat earthers have not even been flat earthers for the time it takes Saturn to do one cycle, right? So the claimed orbit of Saturn around the sun is 29 years. And most of these flat earthers have really only been in their game for maybe 4 years, maybe 10 years max. So Saturn's been doing its thing for far longer than flat earthers have been pulling up their bullshit. Alright, point number 2. When I look at the geocentric diagrams of each planet, I see radii, which is like multiple radius, of each pathway change drastically. I see the count of cycles vary from 1 cycle of Mars to 165 cycles of Neptune. I see some retrograde positions so sharp it is as if the planet slams on its brakes on a dead-end street and reverses back at full speed. I'll have to show you some diagrams for this particular thing. I thought that the electromagnetic toroidal field is meant to be even and consistent, with radii generally similar in order to loop perfectly. So this is the thing about these electromagnetic toroidal fields, right? Their circle work is usually quite nice and tight. Their circle work usually goes straight to the center of the circle and out to the rim, and then when they back, they come straight back to the center. And if they're not doing that particular thing, maybe they might do it in a donut format. So the actual, the inner line and the outer line are far out like a donut, and they don't come back to the actual center point. But in most cases, the radius that they follow, although it's probably not exactly the same radius, it will hit the inner line and the outer line, inner line, outer line perfectly. And with, somewhat, the radius has got somewhat a smooth sort of flowing sort of ease, rather than coming into a point, stopping, going full steam backwards. So I think that, that's one point which I think they completely ignore. So my question is there only one toroidal field? Here's a good question. Is there only one toroidal field or 10 toroidal fields governing the paths of the sun, moon, and the 8 planets? Because if there was one toroidal field, the way I see it, right, all these planets would be following the same pathways. They would all loop within that particular toroidal field. Whether or not that means they come straight back to the center, or if it's a donut and they loop in that tight loop all the way around the outside. But we've got these, we've got the sun which does a loop every single day. We've got the moon which does a loop every single day, and we've got these 8 planets. Well, they do their loop every single day, but their pathways are supposed to have these epicycles. So like, are they trapped in different toroidal fields? Like, you can either pick one and put them all in the same pathway, or pick 10 and then figure out how you've got 10 all separate and doing their own job. So can you continue on with what I've written? Because if there is one field, why does each planet's pathway have such drastically different properties? And if there is 10 fields, are these fields not fighting with each other and causing anomalies? I think I will show a diagram for this. Okay, point 3. And this was an outsider point. I just threw it in there. As you can see, it's quite small. While I'm on the topic of these planets, do we not see 4 bodies in the presence of Jupiter? Now, I have certainly seen them through a cheap second-hand telescope. I've looked through, I've seen Jupiter, and I saw 4 little specks just right next to it. They all look like they're friends. They're just hanging around Jupiter. So what governs these 4 bodies? Are they following a line in the track on the toroidal field? I mean, is it literally in a scenario where Jupiter is following one track and these 4 planets are following the same track? They're just like 2 in front and 2 behind? Or are these planets like, or these moons of Jupiter, are they like a little bit off of the track? Because why would they be off the track? Surely they would all be on the same path. Do they swap positions like a cyclist in the Olympics? Like, you've seen the Olympics, guys, someone's always leading. He drops back and then the 3 go up ahead, and then they just oscillate as they go, just to take the wind load off each other. What's happening with these moons? Are they following these toroidal field pathways or not? So I wrote this in, but I've satirically I'm a bit of an asshole about it. So let's not start to count how many moons there are around these other planets. And I've written Mars has got 2, Jupiter's 95. So they must have, so 4 of them are very, very clear, but like 91 is very hard to see. Saturn 24, Neptune 16, Uranus 28. It's hard to believe there's 28 suns hanging around Uranus, but that's just the way it goes. But do these toroidal fields have particular answers for these moons? I bet Witsits not going to answer this. I bet you he hasn't answered this question yet. What governs the moons around these planets in your stupid ass toroidal field diagrams. Okay, now number 4, the shape of the arc overhead. Now this is one of the points which I always come back to because it completely kills flat Earth every single time. So the shape of the arcs overhead. Like I mentioned in point 1, the pathway we see on our planet each day is an arc overhead, just like the way Flat Earth Dave thinks that everything going around Polaris. But what sort of arc? Do we just hand wave this away? Miami, Florida is at a position of 25.8 degrees north, right? That's where it is on the planet. If you go out there and Google where Miami, Florida is, you'll find 25.8 degrees north. This means that all planets will arc overhead on in a left side to right side direction, which is basically east to west, right? At an altitude of 64.2 degrees from level, or 25.8 degrees from the zenith, which is directly overhead, right? So this is the thing about this sort of stuff. Florida, 25.8 degrees north, and the degree from the zenith is 25.8 degrees, right? Now, I'm not 100% sure whether or not Jupiter might be a little bit, high or a bit low. Mars might be a bit high, a bit low. I know that some of them they're a little bit out of the most straightest like solar system plane, but generally they will spin over in a particular position. Now, nobody ever responds to this. They're always too chicken shit to give me a fucking answer. Well, why don't they give me an answer to this? If you were in Uganda, right, or even Singapore, right, where you are very, very close to the equator, and Ecuador, ironically enough, equator, same thing, where the latitude is at the equator, planets would arc overhead in a vertical manner. The pathway is straight up from the east and straight down from the west. I can promise you this, if you go to one of these places like Uganda, Singapore, or Ecuador, you will find all of these attributes of the planets, the stars, and the sun. Not necessarily the moon, because the moon's a bit out of whack, but most of these objects that you see in the sky will go straight up in the east and straight down in the west. This doesn't work on flat Earth. It really just doesn't work on flat Earth. Now, if you were down in my town, in Melbourne, Australia, where it is 37.8 degrees south, the planets will track right to left. That's right. When my sun rises, it rises in the right. That's something that doesn't happen in the northern hemisphere if you're in Florida. It rises to the right. Now the right is still east, but you got to understand my sun, my stars, my moon, all that sort of stuff, it all comes from the right hand side and flips over the other way. It does the opposite of what it does on the North Pole, up in the northern hemisphere. So it tracks right to left at an altitude of 52.2 degrees to the horizontal. So that's up from the horizon. So the ultimate question is, right, is the toroidal field at all different angles on the flat surface of flat Earth? Right? Because if you were to be a flat Earth proponent and you were to propose that there's a toroidal field controlling all of these objects in the sky, I would imagine that you would say that the toroidal field donut is sitting flat with the planet, with their flat Earth map. You've seen it in multiple times where they show the swell of the toroidal field coming out from the North Pole, from their black hole sun, right, coming out and then coming down to the edges of Antarctica, and then what they show is the same thing scooping up underneath of the flat Earth, straight up through the North Pole again. And so they have their toroidal field sitting on it like a nice cake on top. and it's sitting level with their flat Earth. It's sitting flush, right? But in this particular example, what I'm saying is that if you're in Florida, your toroidal field is sitting at a 64.2 degree angle to flat Earth. It's sitting at a pitch. If you're in Uganda, the toroidal field is not sitting like a cake on top of your flat Earth. It's sitting sideways. They chopped the cake down the center, flipped it up, and then sat it straight over the top of Uganda. So all the planets go up and over. And in Melbourne, down where I live, the toroidal field is upside down. That's why they call us down under, guys. It's upside down. The toroidal field is going in the opposite direction. It's spinning the other way. Now, so to redo the question so that I can finish this particular topic, why is the toroidal donut pointing its top towards Canada when viewed from Florida? Why is the toroidal donut cut in half and placed sideways in Uganda? And finally, why is the donut upside down in Australia? Our donut has the icing of just all these stupid things, but anyway, why is the icing and sprinkles facing the Pacific Ocean? Our toroidal field is pointing towards Indonesia. It's pointing towards Hawaii, you know what I mean? I said, do you understand this problem? Do you have any idea why our toroidal field is spinning backwards in Australia? I don't expect anybody to answer these questions, and so far that's been true. They have fed you too much, it destroys your grift. They can't answer. Anyway, so I'm going to clip this up now. I'm going to see if I can put some of the diagrams onto this particular thingo so that when you actually see what's going on, it makes sense. All right, thanks for listening.